I've decided to take those elements within the title, whose voice, common good, and compassion. I'm not going to talk too much about what the heads of churches are doing. I find it very hard to do as I'm told, because I actually felt drawn to talk about whose voice, the voice we don't hear from, the voice that is often silenced or invisible or inaudible, or that doesn't have the chance to have a microphone like this to talk and tell others. And there are 3 stories that stay with me, which are about compassion and leading to the common good. And the first 2 start with my own family. And as a wee girl, my dad used to bring home a comic for me and a comic for my brother and a comic for my sister. And we always loved those moments, you know, the excitement. But after a couple of weeks, he would gather up the comics and he'd get a bit of string out and he'd carefully tie the comics up into a nice wee bundle and he would take them to Alec. I never met Alec. Alec was a wee boy that used to hang around the garage where my dad parked his car. And I don't know much about him, but I know that he didn't have much in life, and he really cherished those comics. So I grew up with a sense that, you know, what you have, you share. It's for the common good. And likewise, my mother, you know, we lived near an orphanage, and there were 5 girls in my class at school who never had we called it a play piece in Glasgow, but it was a sandwich at recess. Sounds much more posh. And those girls never had a sandwich because there was no one really to make it for them. So I used to go to school every morning laden with 5 extra sandwiches for the girls from the orphanage. And again, it was that sign of someone looking out for those who don't have. The third quick story is a woman I met one day when I was standing on the platform for the train going into work. And she began talking to me, and I didn't really want to listen because I had a good book. But she told me her story, and there was a man with her, and she was holding him, man the same age as herself, holding him by the arm like that. And we got on the train, and she wanted me to sit with her, and she said that she was a cleaner 6 days a week, but on her 7th day, her day off work, she took her husband out on the train because he loved trains and he had a brain injury, and this was a real highlight for him. And I was amazed at the sacrifice of this woman, whose story would never be told otherwise. You know, I don't even know her name. And it resonated with me as the years have gone by, those stories in the Gospels where Christ walking along with the disciples, and from somewhere someone would touch him or call him, and he invariably stopped, and he turned, and he responded. And I thought of all those people in my life and people in your lives and people like yourselves who stop and turn and respond to the need that's expressed by others. So I find a great source of consolation and nourishment in those gospel stories. And I remind myself too that there are 3 players usually. One is the person, like the woman with the hemorrhage. Another set of players in it are the disciples. And I notice that they're invariably the discouraging voices because they tell Christ to keep moving, not to get dragged down by all of this. And the figure of Christ responds despite the negative voices. So I think the challenge for us as Christians in engaging in public discourse for the common good is to notice those times when we or our institutions are those negative, discouraging voices, to recognize when we are in touch with or indeed are the people who are in need of healing. And how do we become more the Christ figure with and for one another? to actually pay attention and to turn and to notice what is going on. I felt that too at church. I remember I've gone through terrible crisis of faith, people would call it. Never a crisis of faith, but a crisis of church. And I found when I've been at my most empty, I can remember, after a long period of emptiness, going back to Mass. And I couldn't even go forward to receive communion. Everyone around me was getting up, moving forward and receiving communion. And I noticed the woman who that week had arranged for her husband to go into residential care after 52 years of marriage. And I noticed the young man who'd just been retrenched that week. And the woman who was about to give birth, probably within a couple of weeks. And a young girl who'd had a court appearance. And I was really, really moved by this manifestation of the human journey and the dignity with which each carried their joy or their grief. And then I got to thinking of our society, where there are people to look after those who need specialized care in hospitals and in welfare, those who help to retrain young people and employers who give them a chance, people who assist at births and in the education of children, and those who offer counsel and support through our legal system. And I found myself actually delighting in church, because the church over the centuries had contributed so richly to the development of those institutions which care for the whole human person. And like the other panelists, that then led me to think, well, where to from here? And this is where I can bring in the trump card of ecumenism. They wondered when, and I wasn't even going to mention receptive ecumenism, but thank you, Jana, and I'm not going to explain receptive ecumenism. I'm not in the work of ecumenism because, I suppose, not because I want to be there, or because I believe in this figment of unity across the churches. I have to say, I'm in it because, for me, ecumenism signals a path towards healing wherever we find dualistic, divisive, or adversarial behavior, and that it could be a sign of hope for ourselves and for our country and our world. Through ecclesial encounter, conversation, and that ongoing conversion, I feel our churches could reflect more fully the light of Christ and assist all people to be a seamless sign together of love, justice, peace, and unity in our world. And that the herald is one of right relationships. I believe this very, very deeply, and it sustains me in my work with the Council of Churches. But it was echoed back. Some of you would know Jackie, who works with us in the office, and Jackie came from China 5 years ago with no experience of faith life. But on leaving, her dad said to her, if ever you get the chance when you go to Australia to meet people who are Christian, he said, I would really like if you would get to know them, because they're the people who do something for others and expect nothing in return. So I'll leave that with you. It's about right relationships. It's about doing something for others without expecting anything in return. And it's about the stopping, the listening, and the noticing. Thank you.